the Super Bowl. Period. We would. It wouldn't be a discussion. If you were starting your team, Kyler Murray would be your guy.
That was fascinating. I want to give some context to why it came up. We had this blind resume. We put up numbers that basically showed that through 8 games this year, Kyler Murray's numbers are better than Lamar Jackson's were at the 8-game mark last year. The idea we were trying to get to was, does Kyler Murray have MVP kind of numbers? Then RC went there, and it kind of changed everything. So, Louis Riddick, when you hear Ryan Clark say that, what do you think?
Look, I think if you put Kyler Murray on Baltimore's offense and you ask Kyler Murray to do what they asked Lamar to do, he wouldn't last, first of all, because he doesn't have the same body thing. You couldn't run him that same way with those quarterback powers and subject him to that kind of punishment. He wouldn't last in that kind of offense. But I know what Ryan is getting at. Because Kyler Murray right now, as far as a natural thrower of the football, when you just look at them both throw the football, Kyler Murray looks like the better passer. He just does. And the offense is set up for him down there in Arizona to really exploit his skills perfectly. There's a reason why they moved on from a quarterback that they had just drafted in the first round the year before and then drafted Kyler Murray first overall, because Cliff thought he was the perfect match. So he's set up perfectly, and they got him some weapons now that kind of complement his skills perfectly. They spread the field all over the place and just let him go to work. They don't ask Lamar to do that in Baltimore. They play in a phone booth in Baltimore. He has no weapons on the perimeter in Baltimore. He is like just essentially another running back who throws the football in Baltimore, because that's what they're asking him to do. So I think if you're just talking about playing the quarterback position overall from A to Z, passing and running, you would pick Kyler right now in that offense that they're running down there. Now, if you put Lamar in that offense in Arizona, you may think a little bit differently, because they have many more weapons and they spread the field. But I know what Ryan's getting at, and I think if I had to pick one, I'd go the same route that he went.
What do you think, Shefty?
Well, I think that if Kyler Murray is able to lead the Cardinals to the playoffs, the longer he plays like this, the more he's going to become a part of the MVP conversation. And you haven't heard him mentioned in that conversation very much, but I think he should be in that conversation right now because he has played at that level. But the team needs to win a little bit more. It needs to be more consistent, and they need to be in the thick of that race there with the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC. And if they can do that, then Kyler Murray belongs in the conversation for the MVP. There are a lot of great players this year. You look at Russell Wilson, you look at Dalvin Cook. I'm sure I'm forgetting players. Those are 2 players that immediately come to the top of my head. Patrick Mahomes, of course. But Kyler Murray's having a tremendous season. And if his numbers are, and I didn't even realize that, better than Lamar's last year, when Lamar won MVP and the Ravens were the number 1 seed, then why wouldn't Kyler Murray be in that conversation this year?
100% right. The numbers are better in 3 major statistical categories through 8 games. Now, Lamar Jackson went crazy in the second half of last season, and I'll see if Kyler Murray does that. But I'll put it to you this way, D. Wood. I mean, which team do you like better? They're both contenders. Which one of those 2 teams with those 2 star young quarterbacks do you think has a better shot to win the whole thing first?
Greeny, I probably have to go with Arizona simply because, the one downfall we see from the Baltimore Ravens is when they get behind. That's when they really struggle because they're not built to play from behind, as opposed to Arizona and what you see from Kyler Murray in that offense. This is a passing league. And I think the reason that Kyler Murray went number 1, I think because he's a guy that's more advanced, as you compare him to Lamar Jackson, he's more advanced as far as passing the football. They can come from behind with the Arizona Cardinals. So I would probably have to get a slight edge to Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals.
Now, he has been spectacular. There's no question. They both have interesting games this weekend. We'll do much more as we continue on all of this. Meanwhile,
they know what we're doing. So a lot of that, sometimes, stuff won't go our way if they beat us to the punch.
So you're hearing on the other side of the line of scrimmage the defense calling out your plays? That's what
they definitely do, like runs, stuff like that. Watch out for this, watch out for that. Sometimes that's what's going on.
So those of us who did not play football, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, wondered just how common is that? The good news is I have 2 guys who play defense to answer that question. Dominique, just how common is it that defensive players will be calling out the plays before the ball is snapped?
Well, we're saying watch out for this, watch out for that. Like, that's your job. Like, we look up tendencies all week. We study all week to be able to prepare when we see certain formations at certain places on the field, certain times in the game. It's important for the offenses to know that we're doing that also and change it up and flip their tendencies so they don't catch us. I think what Lamar is saying is that they aren't doing that. It seems to be that Lamar is making somewhat of a public criticism of the coaching staff to say that they know what we're doing and we're not adjusting. And I guess the stats would suggest that he is right because they haven't lost all that much. I know they lost their tackle last week and they lost Hall of Fame guard Marshall Yonda, but the way that their offense has declined, I don't think is commensurate with those losses. So I think he's suggesting that they aren't as prepared for these games as the defenses that they're going against.
Again, yeah, Lewis, so you played on the defensive side of the ball as well. If the defense is calling out the plays and they're right a great percentage of the time, what does that mean? What is the issue there for Baltimore?
Well, it just means, Greeny, that they have some tendencies. And, you know, when I went back and looked at some of my notes and some of my film study before they played the Chiefs on Monday night, you know, by personnel grouping, they definitely have some tendencies, and they have some people that are indicators for them up front as to where they're trying to run the football. Because, look, all teams try to run the football behind their best blockers, and they have some guys who are much better blockers, both on the offensive line and at tight end, than other guys. And so you can, from a defensive perspective, you're going to be keying on those certain individuals and saying, look, on these down and distances, we're going to make sure that we are ready to go right here at the point of attack. And there are some definite tendencies there. As far as the passing game is concerned, look, they're just limited in what they can do as far as attacking the entire width of the field. They try to attack you between the numbers. So when it comes to certain situations, if I'm a safety, I'm telling the corners, hey, look, a lot of times you're going to be on your own because we're trying to pack this middle of the field here and make sure that we take care of a guy like Mark Andrews in particular. So there's no question teams have kind of dialed into what they're trying to do, and they're going to have to change it up and be more diverse. Otherwise, it's going to be more of the same.
So, D. Wood, now you're on the offensive side, and you hear the guys across the ball, and they're calling out your plays, and they're right. What does that mean, and what do they need to do to get that right in Baltimore?
Well, Greeny, listen, the whole advantage of the offense is we know where we're going faster than the defensive guys. So if you take away the advantage of we know where we're going, now it's at best an even matchup, which takes away from the Ravens' rushing attack. You know, I've always said when Lamar Jackson became the starter and the Baltimore Ravens went all in on Lamar Jackson, it was like playing a service academy. And Lewis and Dominique know what I'm talking about. You go playing traditional offenses week to week, and then all of a sudden you run against the Baltimore Ravens. And it's just like, whoa. But now people are starting to look at this offense, and they're starting to key in on little things. And both Neek and Lewis talked about it. Once you start keying in and you're not changing up personnel groupings and all those things that go along with it, people start to get a beat on you, and that little bit can take away from your efficiency as an offense.
So the bottom line of it is this, Dominique. It's a simple question. We know they can win a lot of games. They've won a lot of games. Do they need to diversify their offense? This just feels like another statement. Do they need to diversify their offense if they're going to do what they ultimately want to do, which is win a championship?
Yeah, I think they absolutely do need to diversify their offense, and I think the ways to do that is to give Lamar a little bit more flexibility at the line of scrimmage, because if you come out there and you're planning to run the ball, but you see that the box is loaded, having some other option for Lamar to go to in a passing situation would help them a lot. It's not that they necessarily need to put in a bunch of new, fancy, different trick plays, but they need to do what the defense is not expecting. And if the defense is expecting them to run on first down, then they need to give Lamar the flexibility to change it to a pass. Or if they are in some sort of too deep situation, then he can go back to the run. It appears that they don't have the personnel to just do what they do and be better than everybody they face, which is what they did last